Modernizing PR, the role of paid media in corporate communications. We're here with Brian Aitken of Ketchum. As Lindsay mentioned, my name is Ben Nichols. I work as a senior sales manager in our brand and agency development team at Taboola. For those of you who are unfamiliar with us, Taboola is the largest content discovery and distribution platform in the United States, reaching over 195 million Americans with our content recommendations. Founded in 2008, today we serve 300 billion recommendations each month to over 600 million unique readers. And we work with some of the web's most innovative publisher sites, including NBC, USA Today, The Weather Channel, The Atlantic, and Fox Sports. At the end of the webinar session, we will have a Q&A. As Brian is speaking, please submit any questions through GoToWebinar. We will get to those questions at the end of the presentation. As I mentioned, we're here with Brian Aitken. As a quick introduction, Brian is currently Managing Supervisor of Paid Media at Ketchum. Brian has been working in paid content for close to a decade. He started publishing native branded content in the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and the Washington Post. He's been a publisher, entrepreneur, and has brought digital strategy to two of the largest PR firms in the world. He's currently the Managing Supervisor of Paid Media at Ketchum, where he oversees the paid amplification strategy for clients such as MasterCard and Hewlett-Packard. Welcome, Brian.
Hi, Ben. Thanks, guys, for having me today. So I will skip through here. This is the slide is pretty much what Ben just said. It's an overview of where I come from, some of the clients that I get to work with. On a content discovery level, some of the clients that I've worked with in the past include Jackson Hole, Ferrari, Maserati, Mercedes-Benz, MasterCard, Hewlett-Packard. So there's a lot of really fun brands that I get to work with. Moving forward to kind of what I want to talk about today, which is modernizing PR, is the evolution of modern public relations. And what I want to set the scene here, because in order for us to understand how public relations is being modernized, we kind of have to know where we've come from. And I see this being three distinct different camps. And that's kind of like the traditional public relations firm that Ketchum was 93 years ago, when it evolved into a public relations firm out of an ad agency. And that's just old school, trying to get, your client's content placed in articles, doing some crisis management, and really just getting everything that you could earned as possible, almost regardless of the cost to the client in terms of fee, but without spending any money out of pocket. And then we had the emergence of the internet and this whole digital space, where it's very kind of fragmented. Everyone's trying to make sense out of what to do. There's no real strategy. A lot of people running around like chickens with their heads cut off, trying to figure out, how do I do the best job marketing either my own company if you're a small business, or my client if you're a creative agency or a public relations firm. And then coming to today, where we're actually looking at data, we're looking at insights, and we're driving back to key performance indicators for our clients. And in many ways, the future of PR, what we're seeing for multi-billion-dollar clients that we work with every single day, is a convergence of corporate communications and marketing. And that means that our communications clients are getting much smarter. They're getting incredibly marketing savvy. So simply just investing in having a piece of content placed with the Washington Post or Huffington Post, any of these different publications, Sunset Magazine, whoever it might be, it's not enough unless we can show the return on investment. And that means making sure that we hit our target demographics, making sure that we hit reach and frequency with them, and tying back to any sort of KPIs that might include traffic to the client's website, a conversion of some sort, whether or not that's purchasing a product, signing up for an email registration, whatever that might be. And then obviously bringing them into a lead nurture stream to make sure that they stay with us and that we can continue to deliver content to them. So moving forward to this dirty phrase that everybody hates to admit that they do is pay to play. So I should preface this by saying that this presentation is not a tactical implementation kind of presentation. I'm not necessarily going to be talking about what we do on a daily basis for our clients and how we execute every single thing, but I want to talk very high level about how to do paid media and why you should be doing it and bringing your clients in with you to make sure that you do it successfully. So going back to this phrase, pay to play for a second, we all do it. And I work with a lot of traditional PR people, and I've worked with a lot of mid-sized PR companies as well on a consulting basis to just kind of educate them on the fact that no matter how much you say we don't do pay to play, everybody is already being paid to play. The second a client gives an agency money to represent them and to participate in the game of having media placed and to protect that brand image, that client is immediately paying to be part of the game. So it's really just a matter of, are you going to pay to be competitive at the game, or are you just going to pay and pray? And that really leads me to my next slide, which is currently what a lot of clients we're getting them out of this pay to play and pray kind of landscape. And as a publisher, I saw this all the time when my advertising sales guys would come to me and say, listen, all of these branded content pieces that we're pushing out there, we're having a hard time getting people to commit the resources because we want to sell this to public relations, and they're telling us, no, this is a marketing thing. And in reality, branded content is kind of like a convergence of both. And so what we try to explain to our clients now is that paying to play is already happening. And if you just pray, which some other agencies refer to as posting and praying, as if you just post great content, people will come to it. But we live in a world where millions of pieces of unique content are hitting every single day, and there's just a ton of competition for that. And if you don't have an amplification strategy, the likelihood of your content reaching your target audience is, it's honestly slim to none. And so that brings us to paying to play, but with a strategy. So get rid of the pray part. And that'll obviously make sure that you amplify the content to the right audience and reach a huge scale. Now I want to break that down in really basic terms and kind of illustrate what the average cost is for writing a press release and potentially having it picked up by a journalist. This ranges depending on the PR firm, and a lot of people don't want to admit to this cost, but it can be anywhere from $500 or even $250 at a small agency or a large agency that has scale and efficiency, or it can be much more expensive than this if you have a high priority initiative and you're investing a lot of man hours to make sure that a piece of content can get placed. This number can exceed $20,000. So just to break down how I came up with this number, $4,200 here. This is what it costs to have a press release potentially picked up by a journalist, and that's if a journalist even picks up your story. So I came up with that by averaging that, the average bill rate for a PR professional could be about $140, and they would require about 10 hours to develop a press release, which is a $1,400 investment, and then it might take another 20 hours if they're really lucky before a journalist picks up that story. So the investment comes in at about $4,200. Again, that can be as little as a few $100s or much, much more money. Well, that's already a pretty significant investment. But if we look at just investing 50% of that price, we see a huge bump. So the average piece of content that we see in a recent test that I did for one of our largest clients, where we see hundreds of pieces of content go live, was 350 readers on average without any sort of paid media initiative. Now, when we added paid media, which includes not just native distribution through vendors like Taboola, but also includes some other, search engine marketing tactics and other, display opportunities including nurture streams. But primarily what we're talking about here is content discovery through native advertising. And so with just a little bit of paid investment, we see the average article getting about 5,000 readers. That is a massive growth. And to just show you what that turns into, the cost difference between these two articles is only about $2,100. So by taking 50% of the initial investment to actually get a piece of branded content out there or earned content, branded content, as I'm sure a lot of you are familiar, will cost this much or exponentially more if you want to have it placed with a premium top-tier publisher. So the investment of, say, $2,100 to go from potentially 350 readers to 5,000 readers is a massive return on investment out of that paid media. To break it down a little bit more, if the cost per click is 45 cents, and of course we see a range depending on what kind of targeting layers we have built in and who we're focusing on and what kind of partner we're working with. But let's just say that the average cost per click is 45 cents. Out of that $2,100, your client has increased their number of potential readers by 1,400% and only increased their out-of-pocket investment by 50%. And when you present that to a client, whether you're a small business or you're a PR firm, or if you're a large agency recommending paid media for the first time to one of your major accounts, when you explain it this way, it's almost impossible not to amplify your content with paid media, especially if you start tying it back to KPIs. And that's what I want to get into next, is kind of like how we really develop these performance indicators, so that way it's not just, okay, great, we have an audience, but what do we do with this audience? Is this audience actually doing anything for us? Is it resulting in sales or conversions? Like, what's the point here? We're spending more money. What are we getting out of it? Before I do that, let's talk about kind of the process. And this is a very high-level overview of what we see on our side. In the future, I think it'd be great to come back and do kind of a more tactical presentation on a way that marketers and PR agents can really be effective in getting this done efficiently. But for now, this is kind of like the 4 steps that we have, which is content creation. So we're working with our content team and our PR side to develop the content. Content placement, which is typically one of 2 things. Our PR team is able to either get a piece of earned content placed, or we decide that this is going to be something that we put paid money behind, and we do a piece of branded content with, great vendors out there like the New York Times, Mashable, Fast Company, any one of those publishers that does sponsored articles and branded content. And then or even if it's owned, so actually the third option would be owned content, which for one of my clients is where the bulk of the content is created. And the problem that a lot of clients have with that is authenticity. So for us, we managed to have a great client where the content that's created is incredibly authentic, and the sentiment is almost always positive. And this is across, 1.5 million readers. So we know the data is there. We know it's effective and authentic. So that's why owned content is kind of an option for them. Whereas oftentimes anything that's owned, I would typically caution against. Third step, obviously, is paid amplification. And then the fourth step is traffic, conversions, and the fifth step here, which isn't here, is kind of just analyzing things as they happen, looking at where's my content being placed, am I reaching who I need to reach, and is this campaign being effective? If not, how do we pivot and change so that way we can get our clients or our own company, if this is a smaller mid-sized company and the chief marketing officer or director of marketing is looking at this, how do we become effective and pivot? So we know that paid content can, especially with native amplification, can drive a lot of traffic. We illustrated that 1,400% increase in traffic. So what does that mean? So what? And this is a question that I get from some clients, but not all of them, because for a lot of clients, it's a content war. And if content is king, then one would naturally assume that the content that is read the most kind of has the biggest kingdom. But a lot of our clients are getting more marketing savvy and want to track back to larger return on investments. And so I've developed a few very high-level case studies here, and I'll kind of just touch and go, but I'll show you some of the return on investment that we've had with different campaigns that we've run for some of our largest clients. So with one campaign that we ran over a 2-week period, we leveraged a product that Taboola actually has, and it's essentially a whitelisting product. And this essentially just lets you target your audience contextually and then pre-select publications you want to distribute through. So you really get to whitelist all of the publishers that you want to work with. I'm not sure if this is publicly available through the dashboard. It might be an agent, like an agency request where you have to do one-on-one. But with this campaign that we tested, we saw a 61% increase in conversions over the standard contextual campaign that we've been running the month before. And for the purposes of this campaign, conversions were email subscriptions, and that obviously was a huge return on investment for our client, especially because this is a business-to-business client where we're talking about the average sales is a 7-figure sales with a large and long sales process. So if we can cut that cycle down by getting people to opt in and join our community, that's obviously saving our clients a lot of money. So part of native and part of the paid media mix is native video. We tend to run a lot of these native video campaigns, and in the last quarter we saw 4 really, really high quality videos going out for one of our clients. I wish I could tell you who the client was and where you could find the video, because it was amazing and it's seen 1.8 million views so far. But for the purposes of the case study, I've had to whitewash that, but we can still look at the analytics that we drew and how we did it. So for this one video campaign that saw 1.8 million views, 1.5 million of those were paid media. So that meant 85% of all of the video views were brought in through a paid media mix. Now that means 270,000 were earned video views, and it's incredibly high quality content that got shared a lot, but it didn't get out there enough, and we had a very small window to get this out. So in order for us to effectively scale up and ramp up quickly to reach people that we needed to reach, we had to utilize paid media to develop a campaign where we could reach a large amount of people within a very highly targeted audience in a short amount of time. To give you an additional idea of, okay, great, a ton of video views, everybody has problems with, really justifying, what's a legitimate view. A lot of places out there charge 30 seconds, they charge 3 seconds, they charge based on the click. There's a lot of different variables. How do we know these aren't bots? How do you tie this back to some actual return on investment? And that kind of leads me into our click-through rate, which for this particular campaign, leveraging the content that we had, which was, again, really high quality, we were able to see a 10.09% click-through rate, which meant that 10% of the people that watched the video actually clicked through to our client's website. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the average click-through rate for a typical campaign, 1% is awesome. For video, the industry average is around 3%. So this is almost 4 times the industry average. And that's for a campaign that has, say, 200,000 video views. That's an extra 15,800 clicks, far and beyond, what the average campaign would have gotten without the optimizations that we gave it. So, and one more thing that I really want to touch on before we kind of wrap up this high-level presentation is that paid media leads to earned media. And we see this as a PR agency all the time, where campaigns that we are running for our clients, regardless of who they are, if they're an enterprise-level technology company, if they're a finance company, if they're a CPG company, we always see content that goes out and paid, not 100% of it, but enough of it. We see content getting picked up by journalists and editors all over the world. Some of those that we've seen include technology blogs, the Huffington Post, the Wall Street Journal. So these are obviously, huge names from an earned perspective, where if our PR team had just simply gone to their contacts and pitched the campaign, there's not a guarantee where it's gotten picked up. But with the paid amplification, it takes on a paid and social kind of mentality, where the more people it reaches, the more people become interested, and the more people share it within their own communities. Eventually, that gets to a journalist or a blogger, and they see it, and the question becomes, why aren't we covering this? Everybody's talking about it. So they opt in, and it leads to earned media coverage. Sometimes that's on air with Good Morning America and different TV shows on Bloomberg and Fox Business. Sometimes it's digital content where we see, obviously, bloggers and online news outlets. But this is a thing that people tend not to think about when they talk about paid media. The last thing that I want to talk about is the convergence of corporate communications and marketing. And there's still these two very siloed business units where we have corporate communications who really wants to stick within their expertise and providing public relations guidance that the marketing guys, as a marketing guy, simply are not in tune with. And on the same token, the marketing team doesn't necessarily want corporate communications coming in and trying to take over pieces of marketing. But we're seeing it happen anyway. It's almost creative destruction. No matter how much you don't want these two things to break, in order for something better to emerge, they kind of have to struggle and break and start working together. And what I typically tell my clients is that it's not necessarily marketing. What we're doing is not necessarily tied to the sales cycle. It's tied to traditional PR goals. And it's really, if you think about it, it's just a smarter way of communications. And with that, that's pretty much the overview of an emergence of corporate communications, seeing paid media and modernizing kind of this old traditional PR mentality and bringing digital media into the mix, but in a way that's incredibly intelligent, targeted, efficient, reaches scale, hits the audience that your clients are looking for, and at the end of the day, ties back to performance indicators, whether that's traffic, even if you're partnering with marketing and sales, leading back to lead generation, or even just building up an email list. There's obviously a lot of tactical things that we can talk about, and in the interest of time, I will open it up to questions from Ben and the webinar.
Thanks, Brian. All right, so we're just going to go to a couple of questions here. So the first question, Brian, this is just from the audience. Brands seem very comfortable in paying for content to be created. Why do you think there's some hesitation at them paying for it to be distributed?
So I'm going to speak to this as a publisher and somebody who's been on the ad sale side, targeting people that want to place branded content. And it's simply the pay-to-play mentality. I don't see this necessarily at large PR agencies anymore and large clients, but I still see it a lot with small and mid-sized PR agencies, where pay-to-play is just kind of like this evil phrase, and they think somehow that if they pay money, whether it's for branded content or for paid amplification, somehow the quality of the content isn't as good or as authentic. But I don't think that's true at all, especially if it's earned content. If you have managed to strike gold and a journalist has written something great about you or given you coverage that is a gold mine for earned media coverage, it just doesn't make sense not to put paid media behind it, because there's many people within your target audience that could be seeing it, should be seeing it. And I mean, to be honest, if you're not going to do it, if you're not going to go to market and let people see the news about you, your competitor is going to take that market space and talk about how great they are anyway. So really, at that time of opportunity, your decision is, should I allow my client to voice their position in the market, or should I just give that up to the competition?
Okay. And another one here. What advice can you give to publishers that don't necessarily have a conversion factor, but monetize off website volume?
If you're a publisher, say, and you have a partnership with a company like Taboola or another advertising platform, maybe Google AdWords or whatever, then obviously you're looking for traffic. So the partnership there is really just trying to find the best way to drive traffic to your website, which may or may not be some sort of blend that includes paid media. One of the things that I like to do as a publisher is build in an option for clients to kind of a la carte select ways that they can amplify their content. And this provides two things. First, it's a cost savings for the publisher. And second, it's a huge value add for the client. So while you're monetizing off of traffic, that's one area where you can look at as a revenue funnel. But while you're positioning content with clients, if it's sponsored articles or branded content, whatever the case might be, you can go to them and say, listen, this piece of branded content will typically reach X amount of people. This is how many impressions we get. This is the number of unique viewers. If you'd like to amplify that, there's an a la carte option that you can do that. We have strategic partnerships potentially with Taboola or companies like that where we can help amplify that, which will help you do two things. One, it'll help you with the client that you're working with to amplify the reach of their individual article. And two, while you're doing that, you're going to increase the traffic that goes to your website. So you're pretty much making money on both ends of that deal. So for a publisher, that's kind of the best way to do it if you can find a way to partner up with clients willing to do branded content and with companies that amplify content. I hope that makes sense.
Yep. Okay. In your mind, are there any types of clients who this works particularly well for, who paid content, particular verticals, particular industries? Are there any clients who don't suit paid amplification?
Honestly, it works for everybody. We see this coming in from literally every industry that we work with, and the beauty of the amplification is that we're not posting and praying. We're utilizing highly sophisticated targeting to make sure that we reach the right people. So if a government client, for example, has a certain sector that they want to reach, it's very easy for us to do that. If there's a crisis opportunity where something is about to hit the media or has just hit the media, regardless of the industry or the vertical, there's an opportunity there for us to reach our target audience and to kind of intersect that and talk about, our company's positions. And then probably the most difficult one to sell would be a business-to-business enterprise technology company, right? Because if you think about it, amplifying content seems like a no-brainer for any sort of consumer-facing business. If you're a car company, if you make snacks, if you make video games, any of that kind of stuff, it's just a no-brainer that you should be amplifying content to reach the consumer audience. The challenges that we see are really the business-to-business clients, or at least that's a challenge that we expected to see. And many of the case studies that I just talked to were case studies on business-to-business technology companies. So these are success stories coming from probably the most difficult industries to amplify content. So I think that really just speaks to the fact that there is no industry that's immune to doing great work with paid media.
And maybe one last one here. Where do you draw the line between PR and advertising today?
That's a good question. And that's one of those things that's emerging. So it's a challenge for me as somebody who wears both hats. And any explanation that I give right now is going to upset all of my advertising friends and all of my PR coworkers, because for me, they're just so closely related, where I'm finding myself constantly working with the PR team and the advertising team so that we get the messaging right and that the creative is right. And I fall into this interesting kind of intersection in paid media where I'm working with 3 different departments all the time: public relations, marketing, and advertising. And they, in my mind, they're kind of like a 3-legged stool, right? So if you have a platform, and that platform is a company that wants to do great work and make money doing it, then your 3 communications platforms, the 3 legs that your stool stands on, is marketing, advertising, and public relations. And if one of them gets cut off or just gets slighted a little bit, that stool, that entire communication stool, is going to get lopsided and fall over. So for me, they all support each other.
All right, cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Brian, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. And with that, we will conclude today's webinar.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And we'll definitely be circulating follow-up materials as well as a recording of this session. Thanks, and have a good afternoon.
Hey, can I encourage people to follow me on Twitter, at Brian Aitken? And if you're not a client of Ketchum, you can go to ketchum.com. blatant self-promotion.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.